Now. So, good morning. My name is Katie Lebeds. I am the president and CEO of Learning to Lean. I am a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt and certified project management professional and emotional intelligence coach. I am based out of Hortonville, Wisconsin, and I'm also an author. I've written three books: How to Improve Absolutely Anything, How to Improve Absolutely Every Process, and the Learning to Lean CI Planner. I have over 20 years of experience in project management, continuous improvement, leadership, and coaching. So I'm so excited to be able to be with you today. And today we're going to talk about some brainstorming tools. First, so when we go and do brainstorming, there's a couple different options that we have, right? So when we're brainstorming on ideas and we are trying to be able to get those ideas out of our heads or out of other people's heads, there's a couple options that we have. So the first option is a mind map. And mind maps are pretty cool. It is a great way to visualize with colors, images, symbols. And in my experience, people either love a mind map or they hate them, one of the two. And I'll have a separate training class on mind maps, but that is one option. So I would say this is the most free option, the most creative option that you can have. If you have a group of people that are creative thinkers and they really love things like that, that they can go out and draw things, then this is the tool for them. Of course, we have the affinity diagram, which is the one we're going over today. And I always tell people when I was studying for my black belt exam, I had so much information in my head. For some reason, I couldn't remember the affinity diagram. So I remembered it with like this little phrase: I have an affinity for post-it notes, and it's the post-it note tool. So we go from mind map, which is very, again, loose, and there's not a lot of boundaries on a mind map, to an affinity diagram, which has a little bit more structure. And then, of course, we go to our final brainstorming tool, is the fishbone or Ishikawa diagram or cause and effect diagram, which has more structure to it than any of the other two that I mentioned. So those are three that I typically use during a Kaizen event or with coaching folks. But today we are going to focus on the affinity diagram. Very cool tool. All you need is some pens, a paper or a wall, and a packet of post-it notes, which funny enough, I'm at my parents' house in Michigan and I can reach on my mom's desk and pull out a pack of post-it notes. So you know that I come from it, honestly. So what is an affinity diagram? So an affinity diagram is such a cool visualization tool. It helps us to cluster related ideas, concepts, or data points into groups based on their natural relationship. We use it in brainstorming sessions, in problem solving workshops, in project planning activities, and it helps to be able to analyze and organize large volumes of information. So, when do I use it? I typically use it in a Kaizen event. So in a Kaizen event, we have done our SIPOC, our current state map, and we're going to brainstorm on how we want to solve this problem in the future. And that's when I use an affinity diagram. So I use it in just about every Kaizen event. I also use it on the fly. So if somebody said, I'm trying to be able to figure out this problem, and we're not in a Kaizen event, we're just having a discussion, I'll say, okay, let's do an affinity diagram for that. I'll use it on my own. So I'm brainstorming in regards to two articles that I have to write this week, and I guess I better hurry up, right? Week's almost over. But I will use an affinity diagram and just place post-it notes on the wall back home in my office. And it really does help me to get that information out of my brain and into paper. This method, of course, encourages creativity, collaboration, and clear understanding. I tell people that we use an affinity diagram to be able to get all of that information that is stuck out of our heads and onto quote unquote paper, right? So when I'm talking paper, I'm talking post-it notes. It's also used if you think that group think is happening. So, groupthink, if you're not familiar with it, is when somebody puts out an idea, and the rest of the group is like, yeah, we'll go with that, right? And sometimes that can be a little troublesome. And you're like, gosh, can we please have some unique ideas? And you know that people have great ideas. And I always tell people that, I can come in and help you, but I'm not the one solving your problems. I'm going to lead you to solve your own problems because everybody is a genius in their own right. So we use tools like affinity diagrams to get that information or get those great ideas out of their heads. So again, when do we use it to sort and organize ideas after brainstorming? It's great for finding patterns or themes in quantitative data. So I don't know what TV shows that you watch, right? But sometimes you will see in TV shows that you will see them using an affinity diagram, which is so cool to be able to catch it while they're doing it. And if you think about those, if you watch any TV shows where it has to do with the police, right? They always bring out those rolling clear boards where they start putting up suspect information, right? They'll put up pictures of different suspects or what's going on, and they're looking for patterns in the data and patterns in the information. So again, that's what we use an affinity diagram for, or to solve complex problems and to develop consensus in team settings. Now, when also do I use it? I use an affinity diagram when either I have a new group of people coming together or I have a group of people that are typically quiet. And this also has to do with your culture. So, not just your culture based on where you are in the world, it also has to do with the culture at your company. So if you feel that people are hesitant to share information verbally because they're worried about any repercussions or anything like that, this is a good tool to use, right? Because it's anonymous. If you really do have a group that is, you think are going to be offer criticism on ideas, make sure that when you give out the post-it notes that all the post-it notes are the same color. Because people will go, oh, look, Katie's got the pink post-it notes. Those are all her ideas. Another question that I get is when we do an affinity diagram, somebody will say, I'm writing down leadership. No, nobody else write that down. Well, no, this is done in silence. So we'll talk about each step. But again, if you have a group of people, I worked in IT, as many of you know that are on here. I worked in IT for 20 years. Uh, not everybody in IT is somebody that likes to verbalize ideas. We're not a blanket statement there, but that may be true in some organizations. Affinity diagram is great for that because people feel more comfortable being able to write one-on-one on their own their great ideas rather than just shouting them out if they were doing a mind map or something like that. So again, if you have shy people, a new group that's come together, or there's some underlying things going on, affinity diagram is great because honestly, we do it in silence at first. So, what are the steps to doing this? First, you identify the topic or the problem. So, again, this can be brainstorming on anything. And typically, like I said, I use it in a Kaizen event. So, we talk about what is the topic or the problem. We ask everybody to write out ideas on individual post-it notes. So, one idea per post-it note. We place all the post-it notes on a wall virtually, which we'll show you here in a minute, or in person. And then we group those together based on like or similar ideas. Then we label those groups and determine the top priority. And our goal is to permanently solve the problem or come up with a direction to solve the problem or a direction on your particular topic. And we'll look at some examples here in just a second. But again, the key here is one idea per post-it note. You write down your ideas in silence. I tell everyone that you must write down at least 3 ideas. Okay, so you set the expectation that each person will come up with at least 3 ideas, one idea per post-it note. So at least 3 ideas. When you set that expectation, to be honest with you, most people come up with five or 10, or some people have dozens of ideas, which is fantastic. But you do need to set an expectation. At least that's what's worked well for me. So again, we're going to walk into this session and understand the topic or problem to solve. Now, some of you have seen the Simon Sinek video about ruminating on ideas. So my suggestion to you is if you are going to have a brainstorming session and you're going to use an affinity diagram or a mind map or fishbone diagram, that you should make sure that you have told those folks, your attendees, what you're going to be brainstorming on at least a week in advance if you can. So Simon Sinek's video talks about the fact that our brain needs time to ruminate on ideas, which means it needs time to process it. That's why we have ideas when we're taking a shower or we're driving in the car on the way home. Your brain needs to sit there and process it. So, if you can, make sure that you give people time to think about this before you actually do the activity. So, I'm going to show you an example. This is an affinity diagram on not completing your homework. So, an affinity diagram, let's pretend this is not the one we're doing in Miro. So, hold on. This is not completing your homework. So, my instructions to the team were use individual post-it notes. We write one idea per post-it note and document all the reasons for your problem. Again, you must at the end have at least 3 ideas, so at least 3 post-it notes. And we're going to put those all on a wall or whiteboard when we're complete. So I asked folks, let's brainstorm why people aren't completing their homework. So what could be some reasons why people would say their kids aren't completing their homework? Well, one person said the dog ate it, or after school activities, or lack of skills. Somebody else said, well, baseball practice, and that the kid felt overwhelmed and they were playing video games or they didn't understand. Somebody else said they brought the wrong book home. They were tired or forgot. They missed a due date. Maybe they were scared, or they had gymnastics practice, other priorities, or let's be honest, they were playing on the phone. So now that we have all those ideas up there, we asked the folks, group the ideas based on similar topics. So there was this group here to the left where it said the dog ate it and they were playing on the phone and video games. Another group in the middle that says they didn't understand, they were tired or scared. Another group over here said they brought the wrong book home or forgot. And the one up in the top right said gymnastics or other priorities. So they made those groups, and then I said, okay, let's categorize it or put labels on there. So the one to the left where the dog ate it, we said those were excuses. The one in the middle, we said understanding. The one in the bottom was organizational skills, and the one at the top was priorities. So from there, we determined the top priority. So if you were responsible or had a situation where your kid wasn't completing their homework, which category would you focus on and why? So feel free to share with me in chat, or you can go ahead and um, talk if you'd like. So if you want to share that in chat, which category would you focus on here and why? If this was your real life and your kid wasn't completing their homework, would you focus on priorities, organizational skills, understanding, or excuses? Now, most people would say, again, I have all four-legged children. So there are a couple responses that I typically will get. The number one response, I think, is people would look at the excuses. And the number two is probably priorities. So, um, again, I want you to make sure that you understand there's no wrong way to categorize or organize these, right? It is what it is. I always tell people there's no affinity diagram police, right? There's not somebody that's going to come in and said you did it wrong. Whatever the way that the team organizes the information, that's completely okay. Whatever labels they put on there is completely okay. I will tell you, one of the structure rules that I tell people is you must have more than two categories, and one of those categories cannot be other or miscellaneous. So I worked with an organization once where they organized their ideas and they literally had two categories. One they labeled and the other they called miscellaneous. And I said, no, we need to refine it a little bit more than that. So here's some examples. This is a customer of mine that we did an affinity diagram on, and I'm sure you can guess which category we focused on. We were trying to solve a problem for them. And honestly, sometimes we have situations where we focus on the category with the most post-it notes. And in this case, it was paperless. So they wanted to go to a paperless system. So that was a very interesting activity that we did. They did a great job with that. This is one that I did virtually in Miro, which we'll look at in just one second. This one was, believe it or not, 32 people joined me virtually in Miro to brainstorm on what the American Society for Quality Management Division, what value we were adding to the organization. So that was really interesting, and it didn't take very long. This was another one, and I want to explain this to you also. This was another company that we did an affinity diagram for. And what I always tell my folks when I'm working with them, my customers, is when you are brainstorming in the affinity diagram, I always tell them if we could have anything you wanted to solve this problem, what would it be? And that's the basis for our affinity diagram. 80% of the ideas that they come up with that we document either in an affinity diagram or fishbone or mind map, 80% of those ideas we actually realize during the future state, which is fantastic. And many times, or most times that I'm working with clients, they have never been asked before, if you could have anything you wanted to solve this problem, what would it be? So this is a really powerful tool for people to be able to use. So you see on the screen, this was an affinity diagram to solve a problem for a company. And we had categories called routing, start times and fleet, driver, ops, procurement, lean, miscellaneous, and hide. The ones with the stars are the categories that we were actually able and ideas we were actually able to implement in the future state. So as you can see, we had a high return on that particular activity. The next affinity diagram, we used check marks. So they had SOP, organization, schedule, system, people, training, pit crew, automation, and machines. So the ones with the check marks were the ones that we were actually able to implement in the future state. So SOPs, organization, schedule, people, training, and pit crew. So again, we did 80% of those ideas in the future state. Extraordinarily powerful tool. And then this one was just another one. We did equipment, tech, people, SOP process checklist. As you can see, SOP process checklist and equipment were the two areas that we were going to focus on. Okay, so it's your turn. I will move over to Miro in 1 second. I will repost the link to Miro also. So if you would help me here to participate in this activity. So I would like you to brainstorm and create an affinity diagram in Miro for all of the aspects you need to consider for a holiday meal. So here in the US, we're preparing for our Thanksgiving, which is next Thursday. I know we have folks joining us from outside the US. So let's pop over to Miro. And just to make sure that you're on mute. So we got to make sure everybody's on mute. Okay. And oh, thanks. We had priorities and organizational skills. So if you didn't get the Miro link, I put it in chat. So Miro link, I put it in chat. So now I'm going to move over to Miro. So I'm going to exit out of this and I'm going to open up Miro. Okay. All right. If you didn't get the invitation over email. I sent the link in chat. If anybody has an issue with it, please unmute yourself and let me know. But this is Miro. If you haven't used it before, my folks from Thrivent, if you're on, you have seen this before. You have been in Miro, I'm sure. If you've never been in Miro, this is a basically whiteboard. It is a digital whiteboard. Okay. On the left side here, we have different tools. So if I click here on the sticky notes, there's your post-it notes, right? So I can I'm going to click on the pink one, of course, and then click here. And then I can write whatever I want or type whatever I want in there. I use it, move it around with my left mouse button, and I can delete it. Here we have templates, which in my case, I did not choose to use a template today. I just wanted a blank board for you. We can put in text, like when we do the labels. We can put in shapes and lines. We can create a freehand drawing. We can put in a comment. We can create a frame. Frames are generally used when we go to export this into a PDF or a JPEG, and we can upload information too. So what I would encourage you to do is to go in Miro, and if you guys could honor my request to brainstorm all the things that you have to consider for doing or hosting a celebration. So I have one visitor in there. Thank you so much. Things that we have to consider when we are doing a celebration. Now, the advantage of Miro is that we can all be in there at the same time. The one disadvantage in Miro is my visitor just put in guests. Now that if you had that idea too, you should put a post-it note that says guests also. That's the only disadvantage. If we were doing this in person, you'd never know that that person wrote guests on their post-it note, and you would never think, oh, I shouldn't write that. So that's the things that you have to consider and to coach your teams on is if somebody wrote something that you thought of too, you should also write that down in Miro. So that's the only challenge. You have to really have people just kind of focus on your own. So thank you to my visitor that's in there doing the teal post-it notes. If it was me, I'd be over here and go, okay, I'm just going to write my idea. I'm going to write down that we need to consider food allergies, right? And I'm going to kind of ignore what's going on over on the left side of my screen. So I'm not influenced either way. And I just write down my own ideas. Something else that we would have to consider is, the time that we were going to serve. Those are just some of my ideas. Um, let's see, seating would also be a challenge. In my house, there's only so many people that we can seat before we have to start asking people to move. Uh, outlets, outlets, like if you're going to have multiple things that you need plugged in, right? We don't want to blow a circuit. So I would put outlets down there. I've honestly had that problem before. Um, let's see. Let's see, appetizers. I put that down. And I'm also going to put down dessert. If you are related to me or in my family, you know that dessert is really important. So we want to make sure that we put those down. Um, so my guest over here is put guests and decorations. You're better than me because I don't usually do decorations. Shopping list, invitation, and food. So we could start to group these together if we wanted to. So my visitor, if you want to put in your last idea, guests and seating really have to do with each other. We can put food allergies, dessert, appetizers together, and shopping list. Guests, we could put invitations here. Food also time to serve. Outlets, that's more of a structural part of the house and decorations. Then we could put some labels on it, right? So that would be, let's see what we would call this. We could just say guests. It's written really small, so I'm going to enlarge it. So everything to do with guests. And then here we're going to do food. We'll give that label of food. And this final one, we're just going to say location considerations. So in this case, we would be most concerned about the food, right? Second about the guests, and then the location considerations. So could you have labeled it something else? Yes. Could you have created another category? Absolutely. But there's no affinity diagram police. So how you do it is just the way it all shakes out. Thank you for my guests that were visiting in here and helping me do this. In Miro, what we can do is we can also export this information. So I can export it as a PDF or as a JPEG. So if you are doing this in person and you're trying to do hybrid, you can use an app, a Miro app on your phone to take a picture of like a physical board that you're working on and then import it into Miro. So I highly suggest and consider it. So thanks for participating with that. Let's get back to our story here. So that is an affinity diagram. What questions do you have on the affinity diagram? You can unmute yourself or put it in chat. I love it. Honestly, and most of the people that I coach love it too, because it is such a useful and easy tool to use. Again, if you are in CI, you probably have post-it notes on your desk or in your bag. So it's easy to use. Again, I use it during a Kaizen event. Make sure that you coach people or give them the information that you want them to brainstorm on ahead of time so they have time to ruminate on it. But super powerful tool. And again, great to use when you have a new team coming together, you have a group of people that may be quiet, or there's other cultural considerations to think about. Okay, let's move on to SWOT. So, what's a SWOT analysis? So it is a strategic planning tool that we use to identify and evaluate the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats associated with a project, organization, or decision. It helps businesses and individuals understand their current position and devise strategies for improvement and growth. So, really powerful tool, not hard to use at all. Of course, you're welcome. So, when do we use it? So, during strategic planning sessions, launching a new product or service, great time to use that. Again, it is a type of brainstorming, but more structured. Business expansion, competitive analysis, organizational changes, project feasibility, or during a Kaizen event, I use it before the creation of the future state value stream map. So in my Kaizen event, again, we do a SIPOC. We already have our measurable problem statement and goal. We do our SIPOC, then we do our current state map, then we actually do a SWOT, then we do a affinity diagram to brainstorm on the future state. The SWOT analysis gets their juices flowing, right? So it gets them prepared to start thinking about the future. So SWOT, affinity diagram for future state analysis, then a future state value stream map. Benefits of SWOT, it encourages strategic thinking. It helps to simplify complex situations and aids in decision making and highlights areas of improvement and opportunity. So it's a great tool. So let's take a look at it. What's a strength? So a strength is an attribute that gives an advantage over competitors. So what would that be? Strong brand reputation could be one, or strong brand recognition. Skilled workforce. I hear that one a lot. Unique technology or IP, intellectual property, or high customer loyalty. So, questions to ask if you are facilitating this and doing strengths, which I do strengths first. What do you do well? What unique resources can you draw on? And what do others see as your strength? Next up is weakness. So, weaknesses are attributes that place you at a disadvantage compared to your competitors. So, what would be some examples for that? Limited resources or funding, lack of innovation, maybe a poor online presence, And one thing that I've seen quite recently, high employee turnover. Within the last year, I've had two companies that I've worked with that have had over 95% turnover. So that's definitely a weakness for those companies. So questions I would ask would be, what could you improve? Where do you have fewer resources than others? And what are others likely to see as your weakness? So those are weaknesses. So again, I do strengths first, and I just take one of those large post-it notes or easel post-it notes to do strengths and then weaknesses. And then opportunities and threats. You could obviously also do this in Miro. So opportunities are external factors that you could exploit for advantage, such as emerging markets, new tech advancements, changing customer trends in partnerships or collaborations. So questions I would ask to generate ideas would be, what opportunities are open to you? What trends could you take advantage of? How could you turn your strengths into opportunities? And then finally, threats. So threats are external factors that could cause trouble or challenges. So what would be some examples of those? Intense competition, economic downturns, regulatory changes and rapid technology changes. Recently, it's been a lot of conversation in regards to elections here in the U.S. So people were very worried about the economy. So questions I would also ask are, what threats could harm you? What is your competition doing, and what threats do your weaknesses expose to you? Now, when I do a SWOT analysis with a team or I lead the SWOT analysis in a Kaizen event, we are doing the SWOT analysis on the process that we are trying to improve, not the company as a whole, because that's way too broad. We need to narrow that focus down. So again, when I do a SWOT analysis in a Kaizen event, I'm doing the SWOT on the process that we are trying to improve or the problem we're trying to solve. So we're not doing it as the company as a whole, right? We're focusing on a very specific area and looking at the strengths of that process, the weaknesses in that process, the opportunities for that process, and the threats for that process. So that's how I use a SWOT analysis. Now, there is, you may think, wow, we could probably do this a different way too. Sure, you could brainstorm and have people write down on post-it notes, what are the strengths of the process? Then what are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities and what are the threats? So there's a couple different ways you can do it. Generally, again, I just use the easel size post-it notes and I make the grid on there and I write down as they shout out the information. But you could do this a wide variety of ways. You could also do it in Miro, or you could use post-it notes too if you wanted to just do something different. But again, I do SWOT analysis on the process that we are trying to improve. When I'm teaching it in class, like in a yellow belt class, I will ask them to, especially if it's just for one particular customer, we actually do a SWOT analysis for that company because not everybody in the room would be familiar with one particular process. So, do we have a chat? Okay. So I just wanted to share with you that today we covered the affinity diagram and we covered our SWOT analysis. I also wanted to share with you that we have Lean Six Sigma yellow belt training, so you can become a certified yellow belt virtually on December 10th. We'll get everybody here on mute. Oops. All right. Thank you. So on December 10th, we have yellow belt training. So if you scan that QR code, you can go directly to sign up for yellow belt. Again, you'll receive your yellow belt certification. We will do interactive activities like you see here on Miro because we'll be virtual and it's all day. So we will start in the morning and early in the afternoon. Of course, they give you breaks. So there'll be breaks along the way, comfort breaks, right? So we can get something to drink or step away. We'll have approximately 45 minutes for lunch and then we'll come back. So again, to learn more about our yellow belt training, that QR code will actually take you to a PDF that is all the information about yellow belt training. And I will also email you where you can register for that. Or if you look on my social media posts, you can see that too. But that's offered on December 10th. We have a wide variety of training that is available to you, and we have yellow belt training. We have another session of white belt. So if you missed white belt before, white belt training will offer that again. That's only 2 hours, and that's in January. So we'll have more free sessions for 2025, and of course, more paid sessions for 2025 also. So, what questions do you have for me today?
Katie, I have a question.
Sure.
Um, on the first analysis, affinity diagram,
Yes.
so you choose whatever number of categories you want to analyze. Like if if you have only time and resources for one of them, you only solve one of them. If you want to do
So,
more.
yep. So for Affinity Diagram, I have no idea how many categories are actually going to come out, right? So you walk in with one problem you're trying to solve or one topic, and then people brainstorm on that, and you could have 10 categories that come out of that. So you never walk into an affinity diagram with already thinking or knowing what the categories will be. The categories are based on the outcome of those brainstorming ideas. So
Yeah.
it's very, very fluid, right?
Okay.
And that's a very common question, Nora. So thank you for asking. But you never know how many categories there'll be. My suggestion, though, is, as a facilitator, I generally don't organize that information. I let the team do it. But I also tell them, hey, we need to have more than two categories, is generally what I tell them. And one category shouldn't be called miscellaneous. So,
Okay.
right. So that's really my quote unquote rules, is that we need at least more than two. And otherwise, they haven't refined that information enough for us to be able to have a decision or have a direction moving forward. And that's why I tell them that. So, you don't walk into an affinity diagram with having any idea of what the categories will be. It's just based on how they brainstorm. Again, each person must write down at least three ideas on individual post-it notes. And to be honest with you, it you just never know what it's going to come up to be. You may have some ideas, right? But that's the challenging part of running that, is to make sure that you aren't influencing it one way or the other, right? You let the team come up with whatever their ideas will be. But good
Yeah,
question.
sure. But when you already have all the categories and whatever number it
Yeah.
may result, like, is it okay if we only address one of those categories?
You got it.
Okay.
Absolutely. That is really giving you a direction of what you should focus on first.
Okay.
And make sure, good question too, make sure you always save this. So whether it is in Miro and you could save it, or you take a picture of it, because you may work through that and work through that one category to try to solve the problem. And maybe it doesn't solve it completely. So you may have to go back to that affinity diagram to get more ideas and information. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen other people that have just taken all the post-it notes off the wall. And later on, they're like, oh man,
Hmm.
I didn't take a picture of that. And you don't want to make the team have to brainstorm it again because they already had some great ideas, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so would you use this category or technique to narrow down possible causes for root cause analysis, or go straight to five whys and then use the brainstorm to go deep on one of the causes? You could do either way. Um, what I typically would do is I would do the first, use the technique to narrow down possible causes for root cause analysis. Absolutely. Um, Sometimes people honestly struggle with five whys. So this one is more user friendly, I would think. And then you could start brainstorming in regards to possible causes, and then do your root cause analysis from there, because then that will give you more of a direction. But great question. Thank you. Yes, they struggle with the five whys. Yeah, it can be really difficult for people to get their head wrapped around. Great question. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for joining me again. Any more questions? You guys have good questions today.
I just want to say hello.
Hi,
Say
Enrique.
hello, and thank you for sharing all this information. A great app, and it's a pleasure to say you hello.
Oh, good to see you too. Thanks for joining. I hope you liked Miro too. I'll leave that board open. I won't delete it or close it down. So if you guys wanted to play in there, that's fine. But
Okay.
thank you for joining today. I really appreciate it. For those of you that celebrate, happy Thanksgiving early for next week. And
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you again in a session soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. So,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye, thank you.